I'm Jamie Seeker, and this is What It Takes. Each episode, I sit down with real business owners to talk about their journey, the wins, the challenges, and everything in between. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back to What It Takes. I'm your host, Jamie Seeker, and today's episode is all about the art of building. Not just buildings, but businesses, careers, and a balanced life. Our guest today is Lance Cayko, a true multi-hyphenate architect, builder, professor, podcast host, and co-founder of F9 Productions, one of the top design and build firms in Colorado. He's also the co-host of Inside the Firm, a podcast where he shares insights on architecture, entrepreneurship, and leadership. But what's even more impressive, he does all of this while teaching at 2 universities, running a nonprofit, and still making time for his passion projects like fishing and urban gardening. So today we're diving into how he balances it all, his business, his passions, and his impact. We'll talk about his journey from hands-on construction to leading a successful firm, the biggest challenges he's faced as an entrepreneur, and his strategies for juggling multiple roles without burning out. Plus, of course, we'll wrap things up with our signature question: what does it take to build a thriving business while staying true to your passions? So let's get into it. Hello. How are you today, Lance?
I'm doing great, Jamie. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So let's start off about talking about your journey into architecture and entrepreneurship. What inspired you to co-found F9 Productions?
Getting laid off. And my story, I'm 42, and my story starts actually way back when I was 13. I actually wanted to be a builder first. I grew up between a cattle ranch and a sugar beet farm in northwest North Dakota, and we were poor farmers on the sugar beet farm to where we had to like hand water our crops. And I tried doing that with my dad, who raised me for like a week. I lasted a week. And I just hated it. I wasn't really didn't really get along with my dad. The work was just not for me. It wasn't so much that I was opposed to hard work. It was just I just didn't really get anything out of it. And so I called my best friend Chris up and I said, "Hey, do you want this job? Because like I'm gonna quit tomorrow, and I want to make sure I have a backup so my dad doesn't yell at me too much." And he goes, "Oh yeah, for sure." So I told my dad, and my dad's like, "Well, you got to do something." And I go, yeah, obviously." And I go, "I want to go work for your best friend, Bruce, who's a general contractor. Like, I want to try construction." So I called up Bruce and I asked him if he had any jobs. And he goes, "Oh, yeah, sure. I got, you can be my gopher." And I was like, he'll pay $7.25 an hour. And I was like, "Gopher, cool. What's that?" And he goes, "Oh, you're going to go for this, go for that. When you're done going for the things, then you can get up on the roof and learn how to roof." And I was like, "Cool." I was just all in. And I just completely fell in love with the construction industry pretty much from day one. So, it was super hard work. We'd get up at like 4 or 5, have the roof torn off by like 9 or 10 a.m., have it put back on by 2 or 3. And I was the best dang gopher that Bruce ever had. And he really saw something in me that I think he didn't see in most of the people that he employed ever. And he pulled me aside one day at lunch and he goes, "Hey, I'm paying to you 7.25 an hour. What do you think I'm paying? What do you think I'm charging the clients for every hour of your labor?" And I go, "7.25 an hour." And he laughed and I was embarrassed. And I was like, why? I was like, "Why is that funny?" And he goes, "Well, that's not how it works." And then he explained multipliers to me and he explained how service-based businesses operate and how you get profit. And that you'd take somebody's labor, like if you're paying him $10 an hour, you're going to times that times 2 or 3. And all of a sudden, like, there was light bulbs going off in my head, and I kind of also had an epiphany, and I really got the rich dad poor dad experience even before I knew about Robert Kiyosaki. I don't even think the book was published then, way back in the 90s or whenever it was. Maybe it was. But once I did read it about 10 years ago, that's when I really had like a double epiphany. I went, "Oh my gosh, my dad who raised me was poor dad. I always had anxiety about money. Always, money to him was evil. It wasn't an instrument. It wasn't a tool for freedom. And with Bruce, it was a tool. He was free from anxiety. It wasn't that Bruce was even rich or anything like that." And so at the end of the summer, I go, "How do I become what you are, Bruce?" And I go, how do I become a general contractor?" And he goes, "Oh, next year you don't work for me." And I thought, I mean, I didn't know it right away when he said that, but now that I'm an adult, I was like, and I employ people in the same way. I'm like, Boy, that takes a lot of just integrity to say that, because he knew. He goes, you have to work for another general contractor and you have to learn a different trade. He goes, that's what I did. You have to learn all the trades and then you can know how to be the general of all the trades. So I did that. I totally bought into it. And from 13 to 21, I went and worked almost every single trade I could, every different summer or like in spring break and stuff like that. Went to building construction technology for 2 years to try to be a general contractor. And I got to the end of that little stint at North Dakota State School of Science in Wapaton, and we're our capstone project was to read blueprints, or not read blueprints, but like build a house, and we had to read blueprints. And I started looking at the blueprints, first set of blueprints I really ever looked at, and I was asking like, well, why did the architect do it this way? Just that word kept popping up, and I thought, and then another light bulb went off, and I went, what if I became an architect too? Because if I become an architect, I would get the clients first, and then I could fold them into being building clients. And I was like, I could make money 2 times, and then I'm for sure like gonna be free from the anxiety of money. And I'll just be, I was just so it was just so ingrained in me to do the opposite, to just be free from all of that. I just hated worrying about money, even when I was like a struggling college kid and stuff. So I applied to North Dakota State, 70 miles north in Fargo, got into the architecture program, and it just accelerated there. Graduated at the top of my class, and that's what led me to be an architect. And then eventually, came down to Boulder. Lasted about 9 months. Great Recession hit, and then I got laid off. And I never wanted to feel like I did that day again, ever. I just never didn't want my life to be in anybody else's control. And so, if you go look on LinkedIn, like my preferred pronouns are positive reactionary, because I'm trying to be a positive reactionary to that negative of getting laid off in that way. And the way we built F9 starting in 2010, F9 Productions, our architecture firm, is we were trying to react to all of those just complaints we would hear about the architects who hired and then fired me, the architects that we were competing against, just like them not doing basic customer service. And that's what kind of led me, all the way here to this podcast today.
What a cool story that is. I actually love it because we have a little bit more insight into the build industry. Like we have clients, we've had construction, general contractor clients, we've had architecture clients, some of the consultants, like the mechanical, like engineering and electrical, like those guys. So and it's so crazy. Some work very, very well with each other, and you can
Mm-hmm.
tell, like, oh yeah, like this group works with that group and whatnot. But there are some that you're just like, has this architect ever built anything in their
I
entire
know.
life? And some contractors that the architects are like, has this contractor ever read blueprints in their entire, you know
Yep.
what I mean? So it's like, it's such a crazy, you know, spectrum that you're going to get. So as you're talking, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. But it's one thing to go from like hands-on to like making that shift, right? To
Yeah.
business owner. So let's talk about some of your entrepreneurial challenges because you're saying, okay, I hear your why and what you're doing, and I absolutely love that. You and I share a lot of that. It's like being in a position, I am a business owner, not by choice, not by plan. It wasn't the strategy, but simply this is where I found myself because
Yep.
I never wanted to be at the mercy of anyone else's decision ever again. And I've made it
Mm-hmm.
through the recession. I made it through just different things and transitions and different ownership, different leadership and things like that. And I think it's really cool. I love what you're saying about just being able to have that reactionary. So like let's talk about some of those challenges and what is it? I think I kind of am getting it a little bit from your history and just like your work ethic and stuff, but how do you feel like why did you overcome them as opposed to so many of us faced a lot of similar things in the economy, in the world, just facing different things, but some of us are making it and some of us don't. So what do you think that is about you that got you through that?
Michael Jordan. I'm a
Oh,
90s
I
kid.
love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
So if
We're a
everybody,
different generation, right?
we are like, if ever the story is with Michael Jordan. I'm not Michael Jordan, clearly. I like to joke with my business partner Al Gore. It's his real name. Is that I say like I'm the Michael Jordan of F9 and he's the Scottie Pippen. And he gets a little rub, but I'm like, dude, Scotty, hey, if it wasn't for Scotty, we'd have lost the flu game or
He's
whatever, you know?
great. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But why I say that is because growing up as a '90s kid, and if you were, I was a basketball junkie. It was just a golden era of the NBA. And one of the stories you heard over and over again that just really resonated with me was when Michael Jordan didn't make his high school basketball team. And he then it lit a fire in his belly and put a chip on his shoulder that he carried through his whole life. And if you if like if so that's what made Michael Jordan. Like, yes, he is 6'6" and highly gifted as an athlete and all of that other stuff, but the determination and the grit and him getting rejected is why he pushed so hard that summer and then got back and then got on as a senior, and then started and then the rest is history with that. So I've always really liked the idea of taking a negative and turning it into a positive and using a chip on your shoulder in a positive way. And so I liked actually being angry at the people who laid me off in that situation. And I've carried it through for the past 15 years. The recent challenge is actually the two gentlemen who own the firm that laid me off. They have since like split up probably 5, 6 years ago. I mean, it was probably inevitable because they were just not good business owners. They were mostly capital A architects who didn't really build anything, kind of like we were talking about before. So they don't really understand business. They didn't understand building. It was kind of waiting to happen, I think. But the recent challenge is like one of them is still practicing in Colorado. And if you Google Colorado architect, like his name comes up. He's on the first page of Google. We are too. And I'm finally had the epiphany a couple months ago. I don't need to like carry around sort of this anger anymore. Like we're there. So what does it transform into now? But that's why I think I have been successful at it. For a primary reason. The other tertiary reasons that kind of revolve around it is I've always had a very strict morning routine. It changes in my life for sure. And that morning routine started when I had my first son was I was 21. I was in college and like I had to make a big mindset shift. And it was, oh, I have to become a morning person. Like I have to force myself to have these golden hours in the morning. And then I get my golden hours. So my morning routine now recently is, I wake up at about 4:30 or 5, get a great big glass of water with electrolytes, rehydrate, start grind the coffee, put the coffee on, get it going. I go pray the rosary. I used to meditate, but and a lot of other people do something like that where they'll give some prayers or just peace of mind or write down their intentions. A lot of it's similar, right? And then and I'm stretching right before I pray, really stretch hard and get my blood flowing. By the time I'm done with that, then I'm coffee's ready and I go sit down on the computer. And the next 2 hours I like to call them the golden hours, like literal and metaphorical, because I make sure that I have an east facing room so that I get that golden light and it's helping my circadian rhythm start for the day. And those are the most quiet hours. Those are the most creative hours. Like the caffeine is flowing through me. It's when I'm most clear headed. Um, and that I think has really set me up for success kind of throughout life because I'm always professional and personal. I always feel like I'm ahead of the world at that point. Like I'm pulling at the world and it's not pulling me in the directions it wants to. Like I'm in control of the situation.
I like that a lot. And one of the things that I don't think it's come up so much specifically is discipline. And what does it take to be a business owner and kind of sit in the seat? And it takes discipline. And
Hmm.
you were talking about your very specific morning routine and discipline, but that's what it is essentially is
Yep.
you're very disciplined in that and stay true to that. And I think that being able to incorporate those types of routines or disciplines into your daily life helps you with everything else. And I kind of have um a feeling as to where this might go, but one of the things that I kind of alluded to in the intro is how much you have on your plate and how many roles that you play. And it sounds like they're very intentional, but you seem, just in us talking, not, you're very centered and at peace. So how do you balance multiple roles? You're juggling running a firm, teaching, podcasting, philanthropy. What would you say, like, what do you attribute being able to do more in a day than probably most people are doing in their day?
Yeah, people. What I used to tell people is I schedule everything, but I like that you brought up the word discipline because I almost said it too when I was going on my little rant there a little bit ago. Discipline equals freedom. Like I'm stealing that from Jocko, but man, that just it makes all kinds of sense to me because and people go, "What do you mean discipline equals freedom? What do you mean if scheduling everything equals freedom?" And I go, because I'm intentional with my time. I am very, very intentional with my time. So I make sure, like, in keeping a tight calendar, that it even includes carving out time for family and friends, girlfriends, all my daughter, all that kind of good stuff, right? Like if I go look ahead of my calendar right now, I have weekends blocked out for just fishing with the boys, fishing with my daughter. I'm going on a daddy-daughter date on in like 8 days. I'm taking her to an award ceremony because we're up for another customer service award in Denver. Stuff like that is I just people look at my calendar sometimes when I tell them these things and they go, boy, that really seems like constricting. And I'm like, no, 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 not at all. Because I know exactly where I'm supposed to be, when I'm supposed to be. And sure, things come up and it can screw up your day. That's a given. Like that is going to happen. You can't have a perfect life and a perfect schedule. But it really, that's how I get my freedom and I'm able to juggle all of these things is I'm just very, very intentional.
Yeah, but I also feel like there's freedom and boundaries. We say that with our children, and when we're left to our own devices, we're not very efficient. We're not usually very effective either. And there's so much freedom in being able to do that. I love that you're saying that. A lot of what you're saying, um we're very similar in that and how we kind of construct our days because we have a lot going on in our lives as well. I mean, I have a lot of kids, a lot of activities, own my own business, and I have my own interests and things that I want to do. And I've never felt like I couldn't do them all or be, everywhere or do everything. We're always kind of yes people where we want to, our team, it's kind of ingrained in my team and my family and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, I like one thing I hate hearing is I don't have time. And I had to learn that really early on because there were things that I was not getting to in my life that I would say, oh, I don't have the time. And I had luckily people in my life that would hold me accountable and said, well, no, you have enough time. It's just not the priority.
Yep.
And at first I was really offended by it. Like, oh my gosh, like I do, it is a priority. But when I actually looked at it, there were other things that were more of a priority that was perfectly acceptable, being more important than whatever level of priority I thought that was. And I thought, you know what? I don't know why I'm offended by that. You're right. It is
Hmm.
not the priority right now. And so I had to figure out, well, when am I going to reincorporate that? How am I going to get back to it? Because it is important to me. It is a priority. And that's just, there's a give and take with that. And it sounds like you've got a lot of that kind of ingrained into your daily routines and schedules and intentionality too. But I want to talk a little bit about the role of passion projects from fishing. You mentioned that a couple of times, community gardening. How do your personal interests fuel your business success? Because I think that people view them as like opposite ends. I tend to look at it much differently. So I'm interested to hear, how do you view that?
If you're disciplined as an entrepreneur and you afford yourself freedom to go do those passion projects like me, like I'm a fishing addict. Like I have a YouTube channel, Fishing with Lance. We get sponsors and all kinds of good stuff. I have a cameraman. Like we put out episodes. It's so fun. And I've got fans, and it's just amazing. And then I've got this philanthropy gig that I do, Longmont Community Gardens, which is it's my nonprofit. We just won a big USDA grant for 86K and doubled the size of the gardens. My son is literally like shoveling dirt today for me, paying him. But when you have that discipline with the freedom, then all of a sudden, like I have made business deals on the ice catching walleye. I have taken phone calls in the garden and it doesn't bother me. It's what I really think for an entrepreneur is I'm not sure this applies to like people that are workers, right? That they're not they're not the owner, they're not the boss, they're not even like a manager who can carve out time for themselves. Is I, I'm I've been I've been sort of rejecting this idea of work life balance lately, because every time I hear it, I have a scale in my head that get pops up, and I go, "So I'm trading one for the other? That doesn't feel right to me. That's not how I want to live my life, professionally and personally. I like work life harmony. So that's really how it works for me. I mean, I've brought parts of the garden into the firm where we're architects and builders, So how can I use me being an owner and a capitalist for good? And I have like, my staff participates. They help with the design work for the new garden expansion. They help with the design work for like the new arboretums and stuff like that. The construction crew help build some bridges, and it just gets sort of seamless after a while. You're definitely in harmony and harmonious. So that's how it works for me. Is like I actually don't ever feel like I'm trading things off for other things, and I would encourage other business owners and entrepreneurs to start using and thinking about that language. Like, should we really be thinking work-life balance or work-life harmony? I like work-life harmony.
Yeah, I have rejected that as well. And the way that I kind of look at it, and I think you're right. There is a difference between if you're sitting in that owner seat versus if you have a job, that there should be some boundaries around that. But for me, this is part of my life. This is part of my identity. This is part of who I am as much as what I do. So I think for me, it was not how do I balance this? It's how do I integrate it? So it's
Mm,
not work-life balance, it's work-life integration.
hmm
So it's kind of the same thing, but I like that work-life harmony because when it is integrated into my life in a very healthy way, it all feeds each other, right? Like when I'm disciplined about my routines and the things that I like to do for me, I then can it pours into my business and my creative juices and like I'm just my best me, and I feel like our team is their best selves. We're able to provide the best services when we're at our best. And the only way to do that is to really allow and be intentional about everything that you do, not just about, one thing or whatever, and to be able to integrate that into all of your things. So I love that. I share that philosophy with you. But let's talk about your leadership philosophy because that's one thing that we hadn't touched on yet. How do you build and maintain a strong company culture at F9 Productions or in any of the areas, whether it's with students, on the teaching front or, within the workplace, whatever it is that you do? How do you build that and maintain it as it grows?
I didn't realize that what I'm about to say was true until I saw it on X, formerly Twitter, like maybe 6, 7 months ago. There was a clip of Steve Jobs, and it was like a young Steve Jobs, and he said, when Apple started to get big, they were like, oh, now we need to hire professional managers to manage the team.
Yeah, I know
And
this
the
story. Yeah.
yeah, and the mistake was those guys have no clue how to do the Apple stuff. Coding, software, hardware, none of it. They have no clue. So they were awful, awful managers. And so Steve Jobs' epiphany was that your best workers, your best people, their best doers, that's I think the word he was using, your best doers actually need to become your project managers and in leadership positions. The problem is they want to just be doers and they know they're good at it and you know they're good at it, and that's the challenge is how do you bring those people up? And obviously, one of the carrots you can hold over is you're like there's more money in leadership. There's more freedom in leadership. As we just, kind of touched on earlier about like how you can carve out time for yourself. Like one of our leaders, we allow him to sort of make his own hours, and he goes to like jujitsu for his lunch hour. It's no big deal, he leaves early for go kickboxing, stuff like that. And also like he asks for like certain to work remotely a little bit here and there so he can join his wife to go on these trips with that her corporate job is paying for and stuff like that. So there's the first challenge of just convincing a doer that they should be a leader. And how do you get them to do it? And a lot of it comes down to those two things, like money and freedom, because they kind of go hand in hand with each other. Once you can convince them to do that, then your challenge becomes how do I foster an environment to where they're still having to do stuff, right? Because they're your best doers, but at the same time now they have to lead. So how do they now their workload is sort of double in a way, right? How do you keep them happy? And it's a twofold solution. One, I think you have to create a coaching environment. And remember, you're always coaching folks. I'm a coaching myself. Al's at my business partners coaching me. I go on shows like this to get coached and interview people to get coached in that way. And so what we did at F9 is we created a F9 leadership group. And so we used to meet every 2 weeks, and we would talk about. challenges that these newly elected or appointed staff members who are leaders, like their challenges that they were seeing with lower level staff that they were managing. And it was a good reminder for me and Al of like, yeah, that's what we had to do for you guys. And now we're a little bit older and wiser, hopefully, so we can add even more ideas onto it. But it's also a way for those new leaders to not feel alone. And I think that was a big issue we identified right away. It was like, oh, you feel alone in this. You're not though. Like now we have this special group that we talk openly and candidly about how to solve those problems. And then the other part is like with the feedback loop. So if the F9 leadership group is giving us a certain kind of feedback, we have to make sure we finish that feedback loop and bring it down to the people that they're talking to, right? And we sort of or that they're managing, sorry, that we reinforce solutions to their concerns for these folks so they can help make those leaders' jobs easier. And the one big phrase we use over and over now again is like when we start every meeting is, did they make my life easier this week or the past 2 weeks or the month? Because that's the goal. The goal is for them to be able to release a lot of that busy work that's necessary and carve out the space for them to do the creative work of why we all went to architecture school, to do the fun stuff.
That's really great. I like that. I like the intentionality behind that, just like everything else is. And we share a philosophy in that with our group is we hire for shared values and we train for skill set. So you're essentially saying the same thing as you've got
Mm-hmm.
people who are already bought in, who are doing a great job. Let's identify them and give them the skills and the resources that they need to grow in their leadership. And so I think that that's a philosophy that has tested, I think, over time. And there's a time and a place to hire somebody to fill a particular role. You might not have anybody or things like that. I'm not saying that we never do that, but I do think that even if we're looking from an external candidate to bring somebody in, we're still looking for somebody who shares values with us, who really buys into the mission and the vision and the direction. And it's less about what's on their CV, or what I say is like that's your tombstone of your career. It's a listing of everything that you've done that has died, right? You don't do
Yeah,
it anymore. It's all
it's
listed
true.
there.
Wild.
And so yeah, and it's like I've been really, really great at something that I've never done before, and I didn't know that until I did it. And so it's really just identifying, okay, let's find the person that's appropriate and let's build them up and give them the skills to do some of these things. And I think that's a really great nugget. If you can take that from anything from this, it's that yeah, intentionality and disciplines. And even when it comes to leadership, you can be intentional and disciplined about how you grow that in your culture. So one last question, and this is something that we ask everyone because it's what it takes is our podcast, and I promised to not leave that out for you. So, in your experience, what does it take to build a thriving business while staying true to your passions?
Boundaries, which comes with the discipline for sure. I've Alex and I have really, really been intentional with making sure that there's two level, like staff picks their hours in two different ways typically, even if they're entry level here, and that would be like they can either pick 7 to 4 or they can pick 8 to 5, and Monday through Friday, and that's it. And for your audience who doesn't know, that most architects still today, they think it's a badge of honor to work 50, 60 hours a week. I brought my students from North Dakota State into a couple of our offices a couple years ago down in Denver. We were touring them, and we would, they would be gracious. They gave us tours. They showed us what they did and what they do. I'm friends with these principals and everything. And there's timid students or whatever, and they were sitting at the end. It gets kind of quiet at the presentation, and I go, guys, any questions? Gals, any questions? And they go, no. And I go, how many hours a week do you guys work here? And both principals and all the staff that was present at those from those other firms were gleeful about working 50 to 60 hours a week. And so I am doing all of these things, Jamie, and still not work. I'm still able to fish. All this weekend. It's me, my daughter, and one of my best friends, cameraman Bill, is going to film the whole adventure, and we're going to go ice fishing. It's going to be great, and I'm not going to lose any business. I'm not going to be less successful. I'm not going to make any less money. I'm still competing with those guys who are so happy about working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. So that's how I do it.
Oh, wow. That is a really hard thing to do. And I think that there's different phases in your ownership, right? That you can do that. I think there's a time to pay your dues and to get stuff done. So not to say that I never really did work that, but there's a definite, I'm not working 50, 60 hours a week, and nor do I really tolerate my staff doing it either. So I can understand what you're saying there. And I think I love that. Boundaries. I mean, boundaries equal freedom, guys. Like about rules, putting things in place and putting these disciplines in place really do help with that free, kind of lifestyle. So I'm taking a lot from this. I hope, guys, if you enjoyed this, please share, tell your friends. I think I can't thank you enough, first of all, for sharing your story, your experiences, your insights. I love how you've built a career and a business that really reflect your passions. I mean, I can see it just in our short conversation. I know our listeners are hopefully walking away with so much inspiration today. So if anybody wants to find you or kind of reach out or learn more about F9 or even your podcast, where can they learn about what you're doing?
Yeah, podcast is insidethefirmpodcast.com. We're on all major platforms. Check us out. We do 2 episodes a week. First, the Monday episode is I have people like Jamie on. I have super famous people like John McAfee Software, stuff like that. Friday show is me and Al talking everything architecture, engineering, construction, inside our firm, outside our firm. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. There's only one of me. Lance, Lance, last name Cayko, Cayko. I will link in with you. And if you want to check out all the fishing adventures, go to Fishing with Lance on Instagram or YouTube.
That's great. That's great. And for all of you turning in, like I said, if you enjoyed the episode, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode of What It Takes. So until then, keep building, keep learning, and keep pushing for more. Would you or someone you know like to be featured on this podcast? Our applications are now open. Apply today at seekersolution.com and click on the podcast link to get started.